My name's Luke Monington, and in this video I'm going to be explaining more of the Pandas library. I'll be describing different ways to pull a data frame into your project, such as by reading a .csv file or an Excel file. Also, I'll be introducing a function that allows you to look at the first or last few rows of a dataset. Finally, I'll be describing different ways to index into your data frame using df.loc and df.iloc. In the first video in this series, I showed how to create a data frame by passing a dictionary. Another extremely useful way to create a data frame is by pulling it in from a file, such as a .csv file. In this video, I'll be using the Titanic dataset. I'll put a link to the dataset in the description. If the file you want to make into a data frame is a .csv file, then you'll use the pandas function pd.readcsv. This function can take a variety of parameters, but for this video, we'll be just passing it the file path. This is the file path for the CSV file on my computer. However, when I simply call the pd.readcsv function and I give it this file path, I receive an error. The reason for that is that in Python, the backslash is used to signify special characters, but also path names in Windows tend to have backslashes in them. So we want these backslashes to mean actual backslashes and not special characters. Therefore, we'll need to make this into a raw string. This can be done by putting an R in front of your string. This will cause the backslashes in the string to be interpreted correctly. Another potentially useful function is pd.readExcel. This works in a similar way to pd.readcsv. We call the function, and then we pass it the file path as a raw string. Next, a function that you will often use is df.head. When you provide no arguments within the parentheses, this function will output the first 5 rows of your data frame. There is also df.tail, which will output the last 5 rows of your data frame. You can also get greater control over how many rows to show by putting a number in parentheses, such as df.head 8, which will show the first 8 rows, or df.tail 3, which will show the last 3 rows. To find just the column names, you can use df.columns. Next, I'll be describing some different ways to index into your data frame. As I mentioned in the first video, you can use the indexing operator to index into your data frame, such as df.age, which will return just the age column. Additionally, if you want to select just a few rows from that column, you can do something like df.age 0 to 3, which will give you the first 3 rows. To build off of this, I'd like to introduce df.loc and df.iloc. Both of these functions are very useful for data science. You'll see them frequently. Let's start off with df.iloc. This is a way to index into your data frame using purely integer location-based indexing. As the name implies, we can only pass it integers. This uses the typical method of Python slicing where it does not include the last number. So, to show all of the rows in the data frame, but just the first 2 columns, we could do df.iloc : to show all the rows, and then 0 to 2, which would show us the columns at index 0 and 1. Or, if we wanted to see the first 10 rows of the first 2 columns, we could do df.iloc 0 to 10, which would give us the first 10 rows, and then 0 to 2 for the columns, which would give us the columns at index 0 and 1. Notice how the index goes up to 9. It does not include 10. This is the typical way that Python indexing works. Now let's talk about df.loc. This allows you to access a group of rows and columns by using labels instead of just integers. One important distinction to note is that df.loc does not use the usual method of Python slicing. df.loc includes both the start and the stop for the indices. The reason for this is because this method uses the actual labels of the columns, and since we aren't using integers to index, they made it easier to use by including the final index. This makes it straightforward to say that you want just a certain column range, such as the column survived to the column age, inclusively. This would be done in the code by saying df.loc and then a colon for all of the rows, and then passing it a list survived to age. Or if you wanted to grab just the first 10 rows, you would do df.loc 0 to 9 and then pass it the list survived to age. Notice here how it goes all the way up to 9 inclusively, as opposed to the df.iloc where the last number is exclusive. Finally, I'd like to add to your knowledge of df.loc in order to show you conditional selection. If I wanted to see all the rows in the data frame where the passenger class was 3, then I could do df.loc df.pclass equals 3. Additionally, you can select based off multiple conditions. For example, if I wanted to find all the rows where the passenger class was 3 and the age was over 18, then I could do df.loc df.pclass equals 3 and df.age is greater than 18. Finally, it's worth mentioning that you can also use OR within the df.loc, such as df.loc df.pclass equals 3 or df.age is greater than 18. This would take anyone who's in the passenger class 3 or anyone who is over 18. This concludes my video. I'll have more videos on the Pandas library coming out soon. Thank you for watching, and if you like this tutorial, give me a thumbs up, share, and comment below.